A crow landed on a rooftop in Russia. The roof was covered in snow. The crow had something in its beak, a jar lid. It placed the lid on the snow at the edge of the roof, stepped onto it, and slid down. At the bottom, it picked up the lid, flew back to the top, placed it on the snow again, and slid down again. 22 times. A scientist watching the footage stopped the recording and sat back. Because there was no food involved, no rival to impress, no mate watching, no survival advantage of any kind. The crow was sledding for fun. And this specific footage of one crow with one jar lid on one Russian rooftop became one of the most cited pieces of evidence in a scientific debate that had been going on for decades. The debate was simple. Can animals feel joy? Not comfort, not satisfaction from eating, not the relief of escaping a predator. Pure joy. The feeling that makes you do something again and again with no other purpose than the doing of it. For most of scientific history, the answer was no. Animals act for survival, for reproduction, for resources. Any behavior that appears to be play is either practice for survival skills or social bonding with survival benefits. The crow with the jar lid broke that argument 22 times. This is the story of what crow play reveals about the nature of joy and why it changes the question of what it means to be a living creature. Part 1. The footage. The video was filmed in Moscow. A hooded crow, Corvus cornix, the grey and black crow common across northern Europe and Russia, had found a plastic jar lid on a rooftop covered in fresh snow. The crow did not eat the lid. It did not use the lid to access food. It placed the lid on the sloped, snowy roof, positioned itself on top of it, and allowed gravity to take it to the edge. Then it walked back up, or flew, and did it again. The footage was shaky, filmed on a phone through a window, but the behavior was unambiguous. The crow was using a tool, not to access food, not to solve a survival problem, but as a sled. When the footage reached researchers studying corvid cognition, the response was not immediate excitement. The first response was, find an alternative explanation. Part 2. The alternative explanations. Science does not accept the crow was having fun as a primary conclusion without first exhausting every other possibility. The first alternative. The crow was practicing a motor skill. Perhaps sliding on snow develops physical coordination useful for other contexts. Problem. The crow was a fully mature adult. Motor skill development happens in juveniles, and the behavior was not the clumsy repetition of something being learned. It was smooth, efficient, consistent. A skill already mastered, performed for its own sake. The second alternative. The crow was trying to reach something at the bottom of the roof, perhaps food or a social partner. Problem. At the bottom, the crow picked up the lid and went back to the top. Every time. Nothing at the bottom was the goal. The slide itself was the goal. The third alternative. The behavior was a displacement activity. Repetitive movement caused by stress or conflict, not pleasure. Problem. Displacement activities have a specific behavioral signature. They are stereotyped, rigid, and escalate with stress. The crow's sliding was varied slightly each run, was performed in a relaxed posture, and showed no signs of stress-related escalation. It looked exactly like the opposite of stress. 22 runs. Every alternative explanation failed. What was left was the simplest explanation. The crow liked it. Part 3. The science of play. Play is one of the most studied and least understood behaviors in animal science. The formal definition researchers use is behavior that is voluntary, intrinsically motivated, incomplete in form compared to the serious behavior it resembles, and performed in a relaxed context. The key phrase is intrinsically motivated. It means the behavior is its own reward. The crow wasn't sliding to get somewhere. The slide was the destination. Play has been documented across a remarkable range of species, mammals extensively, some fish, some reptiles, and birds. But corvid play, crow, raven, and jay play, is in a category of its own for complexity and apparent deliberateness. Ravens have been filmed lying on their backs and juggling objects. Young crows chase each other in aerial games that have no obvious survival purpose. Magpies engage in apparent mock fighting sequences that both participants seem to enjoy. But the jar-lid footage was different from all of this. It wasn't social play. There was no partner. It wasn't juvenile play. The bird was adult. It wasn't play that resembled a survival skill. No predator hunting or prey capture behavior was recognizable in the movement. It was recreational, a word that had never before been applied without controversy to a non-human animal. Part 4. The neuroscience of joy. The behavioral evidence for crow play is strong, but behavior alone cannot confirm joy. Joy is an internal state, a specific pattern of neural activity associated with positive affect, motivation to repeat an experience, and the subjective quality we call pleasure. For decades, the scientific position was, we cannot know if animals experience joy because we cannot access their subjective states. This position has been partially dismantled by neurochemistry. The brain systems that produce joy in humans are ancient. The dopaminergic reward system, the neural pathway that releases dopamine in response to pleasurable experiences and motivates repetition of those experiences, is not unique to humans. It is not unique to mammals. It exists in structurally similar form in birds. When a crow engages in play behavior, the same dopaminergic circuits that activate in a human doing something enjoyable are active in the crow's brain. The neurochemical signature of joy is present. We cannot confirm the subjective experience. We cannot know what it feels like to be the crow on the lid. But we can confirm that the brain state associated with joy in humans is the brain state present in the crow during play. The chemistry is the same. Part 5. The 22 runs. The specific number matters. 22 repetitions of a behavior with no survival payoff is not an accident of attention. Researchers studying animal play have documented that play typically ends when the animal is interrupted, fatigued, or distracted by something with survival relevance: food, a threat, a social signal. The Moscow crow was not interrupted. It was not distracted. It was not fatigued. It flew back to the top of the roof with the same energy on run 22 as on run 1. It stopped when it chose to stop. 22 runs. The precision of that number, not 2, not 3, not the brief repetition of a behavior being tested and abandoned. 22 committed repetitions of a chosen activity describes an animal that was engaged. That was, in the only word that fits the behavior, enjoying itself. Part 6. Not the only crow. The jar-lid footage became famous, and when it did, other footage began to surface. A crow in Japan using a car windshield as a slide. A raven in Canada rolling down a snow slope repeatedly, apparently for no reason. Crows in multiple cities observed dropping objects from height and catching them before they hit the ground. A behavior with no feeding or survival function, performed repeatedly by the same individuals. Play inventiveness in corvids. The capacity to generate novel play behaviors from available materials appears to be a consistent feature of the family. The jar-lid crow did not inherit a sledding instinct. It invented sledding from a jar lid on a roof in Moscow. The creativity required, the cognitive step of looking at a lid and a snowy slope and generating the idea of combining them for recreational use, is the same cognitive step a human child takes when they look at a cafeteria tray and a snowy hill. The behavior is not the same. The cognitive operation is. Part 7. What joy requires. Joy is not a simple state. To experience joy from an activity, a mind must be able to anticipate the activity before it begins, to have a representation of the coming experience that generates positive affect in advance. Compare the experience against the anticipation to register whether the reality matched the prediction and update the motivation accordingly. Decide to repeat, to make a choice based on the positive valuation of the experience. Remember across repetitions to maintain the motivation through 22 runs, the memory of the previous run informing the decision to attempt the next. This is not a simple reflex. It is a multi-step cognitive sequence that requires working memory, anticipation, evaluation, decision-making, and motivational persistence. A crow doing this 22 times with a jar lid is demonstrating cognitive capacity that goes significantly beyond what play as survival practice requires. It is demonstrating the cognitive architecture of joy. Part 8. The implication. If crows experience joy, and the behavioral evidence, the neurochemical evidence, and the cognitive architecture evidence together make a strong case that they do, then joy is not a uniquely human experience. And it is not an experience that evolved once in our lineage as a byproduct of our particular brain structure. Joy is old. It evolved in a common ancestor of birds and mammals so ancient that it precedes the separation of these lineages by hundreds of millions of years. Or it evolved independently, twice in parallel, in mammals and in birds. Either possibility is profound. If joy is old, it means the subjective, positive experience of doing something for the pleasure of doing it is not a luxury that complex brains developed late. It is a fundamental feature of minds that reach a certain level of cognitive complexity. If joy evolved independently in birds and mammals, it means it is so useful, so important to the functioning of a complex cognitive mind that evolution arrived at it twice from different directions. Either way, joy is not ours. It belongs to anything with the cognitive architecture to experience it. And a crow in Moscow showed us the jar lid that proved it. The crow is not still on that roof. The footage is archived. The jar lid is gone. The snow has melted and returned and melted again many times since, but the 22 runs are documented. And the question they answered, can a non-human animal experience joy, pure and purposeless for its own sake, has a different answer now than it did before one crow found one lid on one snowy afternoon. Yes. The answer is yes. And once you accept that answer, you cannot look at a crow the same way. You cannot watch one land on your fence and think, that is a machine running survival programs. You have to think, that is a mind that has preferences, that has, on at least some afternoons, decided to do something just because it wanted to, just because it was going to be good.